What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Source Plug, the place where we talk about movies and TV shows, and sometimes we bring up theories now and again. And today, I'm going to talk to you guys about Black Adam starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. It just came out this past weekend, and I want to give my thoughts on it. This is going to be a non-spoiler review. I might not do a spoiler review because I don't think there's too much to really dive in throughout the movie, but I want to give you guys my quick take on this so that way you can decide whether Black Adam is for you or not for you. So buckle up and enjoy the ride. So to start real quick, so Black Adam is about in ancient Kahndaq. Teth Adam was bestowed the almighty powers of the gods. After using these powers for vengeance, he was imprisoned, becoming Black Adam. Nearly 5,000 years have passed, and Black Adam has gone from man to myth to legend. Now free, his unique form of justice, born out of rage, is challenged by modern-day heroes who form the Justice Society, known as Hawkman, Dr. Fate, Atom Smasher, and Cyclone. And that's as far as I want to get really into the meat of the movie. Go see it for yourself if you want to know more about it, but right now, let's break this down. The first thing I want to talk about is actually the good that comes from the Black Adam movie. If you're looking for this action spectacle and blockbuster heavy type of special effects, this is the movie for you. It has everything you need with the crazy action scenes that go on for minutes, for so long, so many action scenes, different set pieces. It really goes on for a long time, and it really shows you the brutality of Black Adam throughout this. They do a really phenomenal job letting you understand how much he does not care about other beings' lives and how he became this type of human being. But what they also really do good in this type of film is establishing almost a hierarchy of power levels within this movie. I won't tell you who's higher than whose, but throughout this movie, throughout the fights that you see, you'll come across and realize, okay, this character and this character is definitely below or above or equal to Black Adam in terms of their skill sets. And that's the other thing that's interesting too, is that the way they use these other characters, such as these people such as Hawkman and Dr. Fate, they use them a lot. They have a lot of screen time, which allows you to get to see their abilities, the way they fight, but also this interesting character dynamic that happens between Dr. Fate, Hawkman, and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Hawkman and Dr. Fate in this movie come across more as veteran heroes than really new established heroes. So when they have this dynamic with Black Adam, they kind of have this idea of good versus evil and have these type of discussions. And throughout the movie, you get to see Black Adam and Hawkman in particular kind of have this constant debate about whose side is right and whose side is wrong. And it plays really well into the consequences of their mindsets in terms of how they get the job done. While you have Dr. Fate, who is powerful as who is a powerful being himself, but at the same time, he doesn't have that alpha mentality that you see Black Adam and Hawkman display with each other. They kind of have this, Hawkman and Black Adam kind of have this sibling rivalry feeling where it's like you both have this type of alpha energy towards each other, trying to one-up each other, but then while you have Dr. Fate, who is almost like the parent in the situation, where he kind of just sits there and he understands, he already knows where he stands at in terms of everybody else. So he really just stands there and he's just amused by the mentality being explored violently throughout these two interactions with each other. And when you introduce to the other new youngcomers like Atom Smasher and Cyclone, they're in the movie and they do have some parts and some screen time, but they don't have as much importance to the story as I correctly assumed through the trailers. I'm sure a lot of people from watching the trailers can assume that Atom Smasher and Cyclone wasn't going to get that much screen time. Cyclone is someone who's a brand new hero where you get to learn more of her history and her abilities. And Atom Smasher is this second generation hero that is also a rookie and is fresh on the scene. And he's still trying to learn, not necessarily his powers, but just more so understanding what it takes to be a hero. And the other things that they do good in this movie is that they really establish the human perspective in terms of this character named Adriana and her family. They're like the human element that you would see in Godzilla versus King Kong, in those type of movies where you have the monster battles happening, this really big scale type of sequences, but yet you have the human perspective where they kind of show you the consequences or the results of the actions of the characters happening through your point of view. So they do a good job trying to keep it grounded without making it feel too much of a CGI fest in a way. And the humor actually in this movie isn't really does hit well. Like, they show a good sense of humor with Black Adam coming out and being a fish out of water type of scenario where he sees the world as it is, and he makes these remarks, these mannerisms that you would just laugh at, because obviously he's not used to how the world is and the language that is given in this world. So they do a really good job playing into that aspect. They don't make him feel like a goofball or an idiot, but they still found a way to explore the lack of awareness or lack of understanding of his place in the world, but still have him have this menacing perspective of him. When he's interacting with other characters, even if he says something that sounds completely ridiculous, his face, his demeanor doesn't really make you laugh, because he just looks serious in the role that I don't want to laugh in your front of your face, because if I do, you might knock me out, right? So they do a really good job with the humor, the characters established in here, and also the human element that is created to give us, the audience, the perspective of what it's like to see gods fighting amongst each other and us on the ground watching it all happen. So that's what I have with the good. Let's actually get into the mixed bag that I felt within this. So when I talked about earlier how this is an action spectacle type of film, it also is a rock movie. And if you've seen rock movies, you kind of know how they typically go. The way The Rock is here is that he's a phenomenal Black Adam portrayal, but at the same time, his facial expressions are very stoic in a way where you kind of don't see much development from his facial expressions. But some people would say that, hey, if you remember the synopsis I told you about how he just 5,000 years has passed and he's now born out of rage and he's back now in present time, you can understand why he's stoic. I can understand that, but there's a way that they were writing his character that didn't feel like he was purposely being stoic. More so that they wrote it so old school comic book movie that's just what it came across as, and actually like an organic reason on why he is stoic. There's characters that you would see in comic book movies who have these type of expressions that work because it's the writer found a way to write a very engaging reason or motivation for the character to be that way. For example, in the Batman with Robert Pattinson, the way he is portrayed as this more emo goth creature that's very secluded and barely shows any type of expressions besides being somber with his facial expressions. Matt Reeves still found a way to creatively set the tone and, matter of fact, set the motivation on why he is the way he is. Whereas in Black Adam, you don't really get that idea. You gotta use a lot of headcanon to understand why Black Adam acts the way he does. But at the same time, with the headcanon idea, that also happens with the story. The story is very mixed bag in terms of it's very simplistic in plot, but not simplistic of today's standards. It's simplistic in old school 90s like Blade, early 2000s comic book movies, where if you've seen early 2000s comic book movies, this is what you're getting, like beat by beat by beat. It does all the tropes you could imagine, and it doesn't stray away from it. But it doesn't do the tropes in a way of trying to subvert it or a wink at the audience that they know they're doing the trope, but more so that that's what the writer fully intended to give us and thought it was a great idea. So if you're one of those people who you're tired of seeing stereotypical origin movies and how they were always portrayed in the early 2000s and the 90s, you might be bored with this movie. But with that being said, the action was so in your face and so thrilling throughout that it kind of can keep you on your feet and keep you engaged with with what's happening on the screen. But the issue happens when there is no action and it's just dialogue, because then the action isn't there, and since the characters are pretty underdeveloped, those emotional moments just doesn't hit. And speaking of underdeveloped, let's talk about the character arcs that's in this movie. There's not a lot of character arcs from many of these characters at all. They're very thinly layered, if that makes sense. Like, this movie is the epitome of old school stories. So when you have people like Hawkman, Dr. Fate, Atom Smasher, and Cyclone, they're just there. They're more, instead of having them having character arcs in terms of Atom Smasher and Cyclone for being new members of the league, they're more like archetypes, really, than actually going through arcs. I would say out of all the characters, I would believe that Dr. Fate had most developments, but very, very minor development, while everybody else was just one note archetype that you can look up in the generator, figure out that one character trait that they have, and that's what they are the entire movie. There wasn't a lot of meat on them as their backstory, motivation, who are they, and they do a lot of exposition in your face instead of organically weaving it into the dialogue, into the conversation. It almost feels like they write scenes in this movie to give an excuse to give you exposition on these characters, just to wipe their hands clean and say, we did our job. Now you know their backstories, or hey, now you know why they're doing what they're doing. Let's get back to the fighting. Instead of finding a very captivating, dramatic way through dialogue exchanges to make the information pop up. So definitely the mixed bag is that the plot is very simplistic in tone, but even more simplistic if you want to think about the old school ways of writing instead of the modern days of writing. And Black Adam's facial expressions here really stays the same, and some people might give reasons on why it makes sense, but I feel like it's a headcanon reason in my opinion. I think Black Adam, for being a fish out of water story, you could still write emotional moments for him to stretch his range. It felt like Dwayne Johnson was Black Adam. It felt like I was watching Black Adam, but I wasn't watching how great of an actor The Rock is. I was expecting this movie to have at least some scenes where he had to actually act and put in something, whereas this kind of just came across as how hard he can punch and how serious can he look the entire time with his eyebrows down. That's pretty much what I got from it. Now, that was the mixed bag, so let's get into the things I didn't like about the film in particular. So the elements I didn't like in particular about this film is that they spend an extra 30 minutes where it feels like the movie ends. People are giving their epilogues. It feels like it's wrapping up, but then this one last villain appears, and it's like okay, we gotta spend extra 30 minutes to deal with this guy. And that's the hard part, is that the antagonist of this film is very weak, honestly. And they do a phenomenal job, textbook wise, of planting seeds early on in the story and throughout the story, actually, that explains the background and the reasoning and the motivation why this antagonist is here now and why they pop up. But the execution is lackluster because we spent so much time throughout the movie, Black Adam and the JSA punching each other and having this type of talk about good and bad, that when we finally get to the main antagonist overall, it feels unnecessary. I can see why they have it in the movie, because the way it ended, how I thought it ended, would feel a little bit a little bit weaker. But at the same time, since they didn't develop the antagonist as well, it just didn't come across as well executed. And then also, even though I was praising the action spectacle sequences, the special effects at times don't look as good. They look very noticeably CGI, which is amazing. This movie has a budget of $200 million, I believe, and the CGI still look that way. Now, most of the budget could have went to the location changes that they do in the movie, but it's amazing how there are some scenes that you can just tell, okay, that's definitely green screen. It just looks kind of weird how they shift the camera around, the way they framed it right there. But it doesn't necessarily take you out per se, but what definitely did take me out within the movie is the dialogue that's being had. Like I told you earlier before in the mixed bag section, when there's no action and it's just dialogue, it's really not gripping and engaging anymore. You're kind of sitting there waiting for the next punch to be thrown, because Dr. Fate, Hawkman, Atom Smasher, Cyclone, Black Adam just conversing and talking about the plot doesn't really engage you as an audience. They don't really say anything that throws you through the loop. They don't really mention anything that get you sitting back saying, wow, I didn't see that coming. There's not really any plot reveals or plot twists that you don't see coming, and I think that's part of why it's not entertaining, it's because this film is predictable. Now, with all that being said, even I had the expectation of going in here with the idea that the plot was going to be simplistic. I should expect an action blockbuster, nothing more. But even for me, the plot was simplistic, even lower than what I expected it to be. And I understand how some people still love it. I think it was a blast movie if you truly shut your brain off and you just watch it. But then there's moments that happen in the movie that I just couldn't help shutting my brain off because the dialogue brought my brain back on, because now I'm supposed to listen to the information being told to me. But the information being told to me is so force-fed, in your face exposition instead of just told to me in a more engaging type of manner. So at the end of the day, this is definitely those type of movies where you truly shut your brain off. Don't think about logic too, because if you think about logic, there's some things that just wouldn't fully make sense that they established early on in the movie that they kind of contradict later on. Not major plot holes or anything, but just some smaller minor details that you're like, wait a minute, didn't you just say this before, but now you're doing this? But it's nothing too big that you can ignore it. Overall, I thought the movie was a fun ride. It was thrilling. It was engaging in some parts, but I do think the CGI definitely could have been better. I feel that Black Adam's character development could have been better. Not just Black Adam, but also everybody. It felt like everyone who was just thinly layered arcs with one particular character trait that they just do throughout the entire movie. Really lack of three-dimensional characters, and it just has that vibe, like I was saying multiple times in this review, of just a traditional comic book movie you saw back in the day. Now, if that's completely fine with you, then this is the movie for you. But if you're looking for something with more substance in its plot than just action scenes of The Rock punching people super hard and just these fight sequences, this might not be the movie for you. And I will say too, it is brutal in a way. A lot of critics said there was a lot of blood, or it was very like brutal, more than expected to be. When I went to go see it, it's not as brutal as I thought they were saying it. I do know there was reports that Black Adam had to keep trimming. They were originally an R-rated film, but they had to keep trimming off the movie to make it PG-13 due to like a lot of violence and blood. But I'm watching the PG-13 and I don't see what a lot of critics were saying. It was so brutal, or that's the most brutal you've seen in DC. The Black Adam does give off that persona. He does things that make you think, wow, you've never seen that in a DC movie before. But it wasn't as like brutal in terms of like gore or blood as a lot of people were making it out to be, at least to me, in my opinion. But overall, that's my thoughts on the movie. I hope you guys enjoy it. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. I want to know, did you guys love it? Was it mixed? Was it bad? Let me know. So anyway, make sure you like and comment, subscribe for more content. This is the Source Plug, and I'm out. I'll see you guys later.